Hi guys, my name is Marco and we're coming to you from Shift Conference 2025 in Miami. I'm here today with Kenneth Auchenberg, who is a partner at AlleyCorp. Kenneth, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, always. For the beginning, actually, for the starters, how are you enjoying the Shift Conference so far? This is your first year here at Shift, right?
It's great. The weather is awesome. The crowd is great. I had to take off my jacket because we're in Miami and there's palm trees. So yeah, it's great. We just completed our panel here to kind of talk about how we invest in developer tools these days.
That's exactly what we're going to talk about now. So please tell me, as an investor, what are you looking for in DevTools startups in 2025 and beyond?
I would say at a high level, we are going through this shift from user experience, developer experience, and agent experience. So I'm definitely focused on startups and founders that think about what kind of tools and primitives do we need in this agentic world and the agentic future we're moving into. So that's the high level kind of theme I'm spending a lot of time at.
And how would you basically evaluate AI startups, or actually, how do you evaluate AI startups these days? What are some of the key points that you're looking for as an investor?
Well, I think AI is kind of everything these days. And I think the difference between you being a startup or AI startup doesn't really matter in 2025. You using AI to build your product is kind of a given. So I'm much more interested about how you're leveraging AI, but in terms of how I'm evaluating things, it also depends on what kind of product are you building? Are you building something in the application layer? Are you building a new kind of code editor? Are you building a database? Are you building infrastructure? Are you building a foundational model? Depending on where you are on the stack, I have different ways of evaluating you. But definitely to me, it's much more about are you an AI native founder or not? Are you leveraging AI to build your products? Are you thinking about the agentic kind of experiences as we're going from a world where engineering teams used to be just humans? Now we're moving into the hybrid world where we're all going to have humans and agents work on our code. How are you thinking about your product fitting into that kind of worldview? And as we kind of accelerate forward, my job is to think about the next, I would say, 6 to 10 years. How does your vision kind of match how we think the world is going to unfold?
Yeah, awesome. What parts of developer workflow are yet to be disturbed by AI automation? Yeah, automation. You actually just mentioned a couple just a second ago.
Yeah, I think if we look at the application layer, think about how we build full stack web apps, etc. All of us using Devon Cursor, Windsurf, pick your flavor, we all vibe code and build our experiences. And the application layers definitely changed a lot. Now we suddenly have, there's 30 million developers in the world. We probably have 200 million people that can actually build software. So that application layer has changed fast. But I think right now, when I look at the overall space, I actually think the DevOps kind of space and the whole Kubernetes kind of community have still not embraced AI and AI native thinking. So I still think if you're doing DevOps kind of things and you still think about CLIs and YAML files, I think there's going to be a lot of change in that world as we're going to now have agents that can write code, but also agents that can actually manage our deployments and clusters, etc.
Yeah, awesome. So how will AI change the startup lifecycle? What will AI native founders do differently from the previous generation of founders?
I'd say the biggest thing I see with AI native founders and founders who are not is really about how capital efficient they are, how they're using AI to build, and the iteration speed. Also, in the old days when you were doing a pre-seed seed round, you would, let's say, raise a few $1 million, you would go out and hire 8 engineers, and then you go build, and you would build in a vacuum with some of your design partners, and maybe after 6 to 12 months, you have your first product ready. That is now happening in weeks instead of months. And I'm seeing founders going out and raising capital. Either they raise very little capital or they raise a bigger check. But they go out and say, I'm going to hire 2 engineers because we're going to use agents to actually build our stuff. And I'm going to reallocate my budget to spend much more on marketing, distribution, sales. And I'm going to front load a lot of the commercial fit work that in the old days, it would take me a very long time to get to the first million in revenue. Now we are seeing AI native founders spending less on building and much more on the commercial side of things, actually building revenue. There's questions about how doable that revenue, et cetera, is, but we are basically seeing much faster iteration speeds because people are using agents to build stuff, but also you don't need to hire as many people, and because you're a smaller team, you can also go faster.
Yeah, Yeah, so the overall paradigm has definitely shifted. Yeah.
Absolutely, and there's a generational kind of divide between AI native founders and non-AI founders, and in particular when we think about like founders who raised a lot of capital doing SERP to 2021, and founders that now like 4 years later go out and raise capital, is that there's a generational divide of like founders who raised a lot of capital, built massive teams that are now being overtaken by founders that are 3 people.
So how do you see software engineering basically evolve in the next couple of years? I think you just kind of touched upon that, but if you want to maybe elaborate a bit more.
Yeah, like I think we are moving to a world, like my thesis for the past few years has been this thesis about like we are moving from a world where 80% of all code is written by humans and now 80% of all code would be written by an agent or an LLM. I think we have kind of seen that unfold and an accelerated kind of path, but if we extrapolate from there, is that kind of this notion of handcrafted code, artisanal code, that's going to be a thing in the past. It's going to be very rare. Most application code is going to be generated in one way or another. But also it means that our future engineering teams are going to be hybrids. We're going to have like maybe a ratio of like 1 engineer and 5 agents, 10 agents, 100 agents. And I think if you just look at how we write code today, it's like I'm sitting in Cursor, Devin, Copilot, and I'm using an agent every day. That's only going to explode. I'm going to have my QA agent, my DBA agent, etc. And your job as a software engineer is kind of going from kind of like you being the model operator, is that you're sitting there operating all these models, building things. You're no longer, the valuable part of your job is how to compose systems, not necessarily how to write perfect syntax. Actually, it turns out like, you know, we all been coding with like Claude 3.7, pretty damn good at writing React. I don't need to learn that anymore, right? So your job is definitely changing, but as you kind of extrapolate from there, I think it has profound consequences to how we think engineering management, how we think product development. As you as an engineer are no longer spending all your time writing syntax, but you think about systems design, that also means that you can free up a lot of time in how you think about products, talking to customers. So to put it in a spicy way, if you want to be like a software engineer that don't want to talk to customers and humans, just sit and do things, I think that job is going to disappear. Because you as an engineer actually need to understand what the business is trying to do, what your customers want. And your job is to translate that as you're kind of sitting there being the operator, operating all these models as you're building the thing.
Yeah, it basically comes down to being more managerial and more creative. Yeah.
Yeah, in many ways, like I like that metaphor of like right now there was Copilot's agents, and we're going to move to like fleets of agents, and there's going to be fleets of fleets as you kind of build hyper teams, etc. Your job is changing, excited to be more the manager or like the hovering art director meme kind of thing where you're kind of providing input, etc. Like what's going on. But the reality is that our future engineering teams is going to be these hybrid teams, where like every IC engineer is probably going to be more of the engineering manager, because I'm going to have 10 people on my team building things for me.
Yeah, thank you. And the last question is agentic experience the new developer experience?
I definitely think like at the bleeding edges, like everyone is talking about agent experience that Matt over at Netlify coined a few months ago, I believe.
Yeah, Matt Billman, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Matt, a good friend of mine. I was actually on the very first live event where we talked about agent experience for the first time. As we kind of move to an agentic world, it's going to be increasingly important to think about how your services and tools and abstractions are going to be consumed by agents. And that's really what I personally mean by agent experience, is that with agent experience, we're building upon the layers and the great foundation we have with developer experience, but really through the lens of like, if future engineering teams are going to be hybrids, how is your product going to fit in this world? I think if you're building a developer tool today with the assumption that your users is just going to be humans sitting in a terminal using a CLI, then that's not really going to work in the reality we're in now, especially not 3 years from now. So it's really about applying a net new lens of how you can think about like agent as a new consumer or user of the tools and abstractions you do. And I have a lot of like founders I get to work with that are seeing some of the problems of agents suddenly trying to use the tools and say, oh no, I hadn't thought about this. But at the same time, they also, we did a lot of the foundational work to having a great developer experience, and that's actually enabling them to have a great agent experience. So I think it kind of goes hand in hand.
Thanks so much.
Thanks for having me.